What's the worst pain you have personally experienced? Late to the game, but I'll throw it out anyway. Worst pain was post-operative, having my gallbladder removed. During the surgery, the doctor nicked my small intestine and failed to notice. I remember post-op telling the nurse something wasn't right and I couldn't urinate. Straight cathed me and sent me home. I was on my couch telling my wife that the pain was worse than I had ever experienced. Went back to the hospital via ambulance and spent the next 24 hours being ignored, thinking I was looking for pain meds. Septic shock, 9 surgeries, and near total organ shutdown. I survived with an ileostomy. ICU, hospital, and rehab total just shy of 3 months. Bonus pain would be the pancreatitis that led me to the gallbladder surgery. I wrote this on a different thread, but I had kidney stones and they told me it was a ruptured ovarian cyst. So they sent me home. Apparently, if pain has to do with your ovaries, you don't get treatment for it. Well, I came back to the hospital after the pain hadn't subsided, and because I was misdiagnosed with ruptured ovarian cysts, I got to do a lot of fun tests like internal ultrasounds before they realized what was up and gave me a little something for the pain. Same thing happened to both me and my sister. I had a horrible pain while practicing for a play in high school and just stood on the stage for a minute. All of my fellow castmates just stared, thinking I was choking. I went into the back room and just sat down, almost in shock. My parents and everyone kept saying it was anxiety, stage fright, etc. I told them I was in horrible pain and I finally went to the ER where they found a huge cyst sitting on my ovary. It didn't even actually rupture, but it was large enough to be interfering with nerves and was basically on its last leg. If I had stayed at rehearsal, it probably would have burst, which, due to the size and location, may have destroyed my inside/ability to have children. My cousin was diagnosed with ovarian cancer at 16. She was frequently going to the doctors years prior to her diagnosis, complaining about severe lower abdominal pain. Every doctor wrote it off as normal period pain. She literally had cancer for years before doctors ordered a CT scan and found the cancer. The tumor ended up being the size of a small basketball. Luckily, she has been in remission for 9 years. It's crazy how no one takes women's pain seriously and write it off as girl problems. This makes me so happy to have a good OBGYN. She initially suggested my pain could just be cramping, but when I informed her of how sudden the onset was, I hadn't had severe period cramping for years, and suddenly boom, hell on earth every month. She flat out said, "It could be nothing serious, and I want you to change your NuvaRing usage, leave it in 28 days and replace, instead of taking it out for 7, to skip your period altogether. There's no medical need for a period and it's causing you unnecessary pain. However, I'm also writing you a referral for a sonogram because it could be quite serious." It ended up being endometriosis, which she explained to me is not really treatable outside of pain management, so if I only got the pain during my periods, I should just continue to skip getting my period. A very simple solution to a painful problem, but I'm grateful I got a sonogram so that more serious issues could be ruled out. So much this. I was in the ER almost 2 years ago from abdomen pain. I couldn't even lift my head without crying and shaking in pain. They gave me a pain med right there and sent me home without actually doing anything about what was causing the pain. When the doctor came in the room, they asked the nurse why I was still there right outside my door. Like, bitch, I can hear you. Jesus fuck, that pain was horrid. The cunt who operated on me the day before fucked me up and caused a lot of damage to my muscles after what should have been a simple gallbladder removal. My entire abdomen was black with bruising from it. That's not a normal thing for a non-invasive surgery. And she tried to tell me nothing was wrong. Yet I reported the bitch for malpractice and got all my bills paid. I'm still pissed about that. Had a postpartum hemorrhage after an unmedicated birth. They tried giving me different medications to stop the bleeding, none of those worked. They ended up doing bimanual compressions, which means they put one hand all the way up into my uterus, and grabbed it, basically using it like a glove and folding it in half, and then with the other hand pushing very, very hard on the outside of my stomach, to apply pressure and try to stop the bleeding until I could go to the OR. All of this unmedicated. Anyone of any age who's had chicken pox can get shingles. They don't know exactly why the varicella-zoster virus reactivates. I've had 2 10-pound babies, all natural childbirth, herniated discs, broken bones, back surgeries, root canals, vein strippings and a concussion. Only shingles turned me into a blubbering mess and had me in agony. On the upside, they now have a vaccine for shingles which helps prevent it and lessens the symptoms if you do get it. It wasn't around when I had shingles. Take care of yourself and try to avoid stress if you can. It weakens your immune system. I'll start. I broke my arm when I was younger. Full on in half. Bent funny. Broken. But it was a clean break. No fragments. The doctor obviously needed to set it. It wasn't so bad that it was a do it right now to keep your arm bad though. So I was given the choice to either wait 24 hours from that moment, no eating, and be put under anesthesia. Or do it now, no pain meds. I figured fuck it. I just broke my arm, how much worse could it be? Doctor came in with 3 nurses, plaster, and a towel. My dad held his hand out for me to squeeze. I remember him saying, "Okay. You are much braver than I am." They gave me the towel to bite down on. Jesus Christ, how did you not pass out? I broke my arm a couple years back, 2 ligament fractures, which is where the ligament is under such stress, in my case from a bad fall, that it tears away from bone it's anchored to, taking a piece or pieces with it. I'm not too bad with pain, but holy shit, that was bad. I was getting x-rays done and the tech was like, "Okay, now turn your arm this way, now bend it this way," and I was crying so hard the entire waiting room could hear me, according to my husband. Like that pain broke me. I can't imagine yours. For me it was draining the cyst that did it. They had given me antibiotics but didn't tell me I needed it drained, so I went another week without even making an appointment. It was 4 inches long by the time they drained it. I was dumb and my local X-rays scare wasn't helpful. Painkillers didn't work. Local anesthetics didn't work. I could hear myself screaming for what felt like an eternity while they vacuumed out the bacteria. They had to pack the wound, too. And the smell. Well. It was a few inches deep and I may have traumatized my husband, who had to repack it and clean it for weeks after. I would not wish this experience on my worst enemies. I'm glad to hear that I'm not alone here. I've been dealing with this lately and I've had it drained 5 to 6 times, but it keeps coming back. The doctors keep looking at me like I'm weird for gasping and swearing as I writhe in pain, as though it isn't that bad for most people. I once had a doctor pull an infected molar having forgotten to numb me first, but I think that this cyst nonsense is my answer to the question of my most painful experience. The stinging, swollen feeling of the lidocaine being injected into a cyst so sensitive that I want to cry when my light sheets brush over it is something I'll never forget. That and the wound care nurse cramming gauze into it when repacking without lidocaine because they only numb it when making an incision. His was me. I had horrible pains months before in my abdomen that would eventually go away. Okay, period pains. Then it happened again a month after I gave birth and I knew something was up. I wasn't supposed to menstruate for another month at least. BF forced me to the ER and I was in surgery the next morning. The only thing that helped was the Dilaudid, or however you spell it. Can confirm. Woman here with endometriosis. The first time it went off they thought my appendix was rupturing. A simple touch had me screaming in agony. Thankfully it only took me 1 year of that pain every day to get diagnosed, the usual time is 7 years. In that time I was told that there wasn't anything wrong with me. That all the tests were negative. That maybe it was in my head all this time. Maybe I was faking it. Today I still have that same pain, every day, but I'm on strong painkillers that helps me move around at least. There is no cure for this, it's chronic. 1/10 women have this. A long-term constipation that finally decided it was time to go. You know those stomach cramps you get when you have bowel/stomach problems? Okay, so, kick the pain up by about 4x and make it last an entire day. For most of the day nothing came out and I barely felt anything move. I tried laying down, chugging water, exercising, etc. Basically everything you're supposed to do short of laxatives to help initiate a bowel movement. Just this constant pain that would randomly get really sharp like I was getting stabbed for a minute at a time and make me feel like I needed to throw up. Got to a point I passed out from exhaustion at one point. Finally, near the end of the day the main blockage finally passed and everything just flowed out. Cannot properly articulate how much relief I felt once it was over. Best way I can describe the whole thing is trying to pass a brick followed by gravel. Just an overall terrible experience. I had a similar experience. Was in the ER for hours waiting. They said they were getting me morphine but it never showed up. After a few hours the stone made it into my bladder and the pain subsided. Never did see a doctor, by the time I even saw a nurse it was already over. Left without treatment and got a 5-figure bill later on that thankfully insurance covered most of. Useless American healthcare. I passed the stone a couple months later which hurt a hell of a lot less than the stone moving from the kidney to the bladder. The bright side of this story is every injury I have had since then hasn't really bothered me because the pain cannot compare. Exactly this. This to me sounds like the doctor fucked up here. In every facility I've worked in where this kind of procedure is being done, they put the patient to sleep with a gas. Then cut them open. Usually they leave the wound open and pack it. We would take care of some pretty big ones too, and even those they would be put under when sewing some of it back closed once the infection was gone and it was healed enough to not be exposed to open air. Ruptured my whole eardrum. I felt like I had an ear infection or something, called into the doctors and went for a checkup, but apparently my ear was so full of wax they couldn't see what was wrong with my ear, or was the wax just causing the pain. I went to a pharmacy to get medicine drops to dissolve the wax, and if the pain didn't go away I'd call them again the next day. I was heading to bed so I put the drops in my ear like doctor told me to. The next couple hours I just couldn't get any sleep as I could hear the meds breaking through the wax, sounded kind of like how soda bubbles. Then at like 2 or 3 a.m., it finally broke through, and while doing so the sudden change in air pressure caused my right ear's eardrum to basically just explode. Luckily I lived with my parents back then, so while in incredible pain I went to wake them up so I could get a drive to the hospital. Then there spent the next 2 to 3 hours in the middle of the night sitting in the lounge waiting to get called in. Also got a scratch on my cornea like only a month later, so the middle of the night hospital visits became routine. Period cramps can be serious. I got them real bad before I finally went on birth control. So that time that happened was while my friend was dyeing my hair. I wake up, screaming in pain, and she called a mutual friend freaking out about what to do. Our mutual friend advised her to get the dye out of my hair before anything else, otherwise it would burn my scalp. By the time we got the dye out, I was having a nice soak in the bath and felt tired. I went to sleep in her bed for a few hours before I woke up feeling much better. I ate 7 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in one sitting. I was a poor college student at the time and sometimes starved during the week. That weekend I was home at my parents' and up late by myself. I don't know what possessed me, but I started making PB&J sandwiches and didn't stop. I ate 7 sandwiches and went to sleep. 2 hours later, I woke up with the worst pain in my stomach that I've ever had. I woke my mom up and made her pound on my back to help relieve the pain. She did it for over an hour until I was able to go to the bathroom. I will never eat that many PB&J sandwiches again. Must have glued my intestines together or something. Dental pain. Exposed nerve in a broken tooth, totally utterly debilitating pain. You can't move, can barely breathe just in case the air movement or temperature touches that nerve. The pain goes up into your ear, down your jaw into your shoulder and chest. There is no relief, no knowing how long until it fades. There will be a wave where it intensifies, and you have no way of knowing whether this new level is going to lessen, or if it's now your new normal. Unless you have been through it, you won't understand how bad it can truly be. And if you have been through it, then you know. Nothing compares. This might be my time to shine. I broke my elbow when I was younger. The solution was putting a plaster and some nails, Kirschner something, from my elbow almost to the shoulder and keep it for 1 month. When they took the plaster off, I saw the nails and they had to take them off with no anesthesia. From inside my bone I felt like they were moving all my skeleton and half my soul because of the pain. Currently I don't feel anything from my elbow to the tip of my fingers on the same arm they touched the radial nerve. It's so hard to explain, but at the most essential level, you realize that everything you thought you knew for sure is wrong, maybe even morally wrong, and you've based your whole life around that, and maybe even made some really bad mistakes because of it, and now you have to shape who you are from the ground up as an adult. You start over being you. Check out Ex-Angelicals, so much to unpack. I am an ex-fundy light Christian and have been an atheist for 10 years, and I'm still deconstructing and realizing how traumatized I am / how much my decisions even now are colored by religion. Thankfully I don't remember the pain in itself, but when I was 5 I had a terrible cavity make itself known as I was on vacation with my family. I had to be rushed to the dentist, screaming in pain, for 140 kilometers to have a root canal done. I remember laying there, seeing the dentist approach with the anesthetic needle, which in my 5-year-old brain was huge and terrifying, like one you would see in a movie, and immediately protesting and refusing to let it anywhere near me. Both the dentist and my dad tried to convince me that it was for my own good, but I was having absolutely none of it. And that's how at age 5 I had a root canal done, with zero pain management other than a mild superficial ointment that did about as much good as you can imagine, and I think that's partially responsible for the fact that my dad's hearing started deteriorating when he was only 50.